Hi, folks. Welcome to another episode of Film Study. This is Ken McCusick, and we're here to continue our UFA series today. We're going to talk about another player here, a pass rusher, and I'll let our guest talk to him about it. Introduce him directly, and that's Hank Chavez. Hank, how you doing?
I'm doing good, Ken. Thanks for having me on. I really do appreciate it.
All right. Well, appreciate you coming on. And who's your guy?
It's Chase Young. We know a lot about him just because he was drafted by the Commanders right down the road.
There you go. And we get subjected to their 1 o'clock games more often than we'd like, obviously, because of the proximity. In terms of Chase Young, been in the league 5 years. He's now played in his 3 teams between Washington, San Francisco, and New Orleans. It seems like forever ago, frankly, for the Washington football team or the Commanders or whatever the hell they were called at the time, that they disassembled their pass rush during the 2023 season by trading both Sweat and Young, right? At the same week or so.
And it was about halfway through the season when they just broke up. And I understand Washington has a lot of great depth on their defensive line. But I'm a fan of Chase Young. I think he would help the Ravens tremendously.
All right, so let's look at the Ravens' current situation at edge rusher. What are they looking to fix as you see it?
Well, they play a 3-4 more than you do a 4-3. They're probably going to lose Pierce, who plays in the middle, not really on the edge, but Pierce actually push sometimes Matabike out on the edge a little bit and give him a little more opportunity to go one-on-one out there. And really the defensive linemen they have coming back next year or under contract are Jones, Matabike, and Broderick. And because Urban's a free agent, and then they have some other younger guys back there. But I like Chase just partially, Ken, because of his age. He's 25 years old. He's played 5 years, going to be 26 here in about 2 months.
Mm-hmm. 26 in April is absolutely right. So obviously as a younger free agent, he probably commands more dollars. He's been injury prone so far in his career. I'd say he certainly had some injury issues that have dogged him a little bit, but played pretty well when he's been healthy. At least he's rushed the passer pretty well. I don't think he's lived up to the number 2 overall selection expectations.
I don't. And, part of that number 2 selection is probably because he came from, Ohio State, where they get a lot of recruits and a lot of top high school players coming in. I will say with Young, he was hurt. He had those 2 major injuries. I believe one was a tendon and one was a knee early in his career, but he's pretty much played the last 2 years. He played 16 games and 17 games. So I believe that he will be ramping back up his speed, his quickness, and his agility. I think he can help. And one of the things that Chase does that some of the other free agents that are coming out now this year is, we know how the Ravens like to drop their linemen back in coverage sometimes every now and then. And if Michael Pierce can get a pick, then I think that Chase could do that as well. And actually Chase has played dropped a little bit on that in the pass coverage on a few times.
Yeah, about 4.3% of the time, 4.4% for his career. So that's not nothing. And being a 4.3 end for most of his career as opposed to a 3.4, he's been a guy who probably has had less opportunity to do that. Most 4.3 teams don't rely on the end to drop very often.
Correct.
Okay, so a lot of people take a step back and talk about the Ravens pass rush a little bit. The Ravens were second in the league in sacks this last year. They'll be returning essentially the same cast with the possible exception of Pierce on the interior line, but at the edge they'll be returning essentially the same cast with Owe coming off his best sack year, not his best pressure year. With Van Noy coming off of his best year of his career and obviously a year older. And then Tavius Robinson coming back and hopefully making a step forward as a pass rusher. Is there something to be said? Chase Young will cost a lot of money, and it'll be some guy the Ravens can certainly go after. But is there something to be said for the Ravens trying to go cheap and either get a guy in the draft, or more likely what they've done in recent years, get a very effective guy for close to the vet minimum out of free agency?
Well, I do anticipate them making either bring in Urban back, or maybe even Calais Campbell back probably on a 1-year deal, just to shore up the inside. The thing with you're exactly right about the second in the league in sacks, but we were 20th in the league in defensive line pressure rate. So we're near the bottom just from pressure from our D line. A lot of our pressure seems to come from schemes that and even Mike did before that, the year before, because he schemes it so well with his set of linebackers, or even Hamilton and things like that. I think if we can create more pressure from the defensive line, that will help. Philadelphia showed that in the Super Bowl against Kansas City, and a lot of teams over the last 5-6 years have tried to find a way to create pressure with 4 people and drop 7 in the coverage, especially against the better teams like Buffalo and Kansas City. If we could get Chase on the same D line with Jones and Matabike on passing downs, and then you have, Owe and Van Noy and Hamilton, you just don't really know where you're going to be able to create pressure if your offense is going against that. I think that Chase Young is a very good, I have a stat here that he's a very good one-on-one pass rusher.
Sure, he is.
And that only helps. That only creates more for in that defense to create one-on-one matchups like they did with Van Noy a lot of times last year.
Okay, so I have some statistics for myself that I wanted to present in terms of the 4-man pass rush percentage, because I think this is going to surprise a lot of people. In 2024, the Ravens rushed 4 men on 77% of pass rushes. Okay, actually 4 or 3. It's going to be even higher than that, because they had 23-man rushes as well. So that's 678. 81% of the time they rushed 4 or 3. Let's go back to the 2000 Ravens for a second. What percentage of the time would you guess that team rushed either 4 or 3 men? Now, they didn't have a big high sack total, by the way.
No,
they had great defense with not a big high sack total.
I'm going to say it's probably very close to that, or a little bit below that, because they jammed up that middle with those big boys there, and hope those defensive ends could get to the quarterback.
Okay, only 70% of the time did they rush either 3 or 4. So that means 30% of the time they were rushing 5, 6, or 7 during the regular season. I'm just rewatching this season right now, because I'm going to do a show on this about the 2000 Ravens defense, just reviewing each game individually using my current methods to do this. And it's remarkable how often, Marvin Lewis set the all-out blitz. It's kind of surprising that he didn't have the reputation for it that Wink Martindale developed, certainly later, but much more aggressive than Orr or McDonald in terms of sending multiples on this. So here's my point. Sure. Yes, the Ravens have gotten a lot of their pass rush by scheme over the last couple of years. It's also been very effective. And they led the league 2 years ago. I think they led the league in sacks with 61, and then they dropped off to Triple Crown defense, right? And then dropped off to second in the league in sacks this last year. It's not the way that people expect it to be done, but it's not hurting them in terms of pass defense, at least not once they figured it out at the last, from week 11 on. They were the best pass defense in the league, best defense period. You can spend a lot of money at pass rusher. You can go out and you can find guys to buy. I question if it's a good place to spend money when you're effective playing defense, by other means that are less costly.
Well, and you bring up a great point. We have other needs that probably are more dire than a pass rushing defensive lineman. I think the reason that I like Chase, it gives another a tool in the toolbox. He can
Mhm.
really dial up and create one-on-one pressures, not only for Matabike and Van Noy and Hamilton and things like that, but you can also create that for a defensive lineman just on stunts with Matabike and Young on the same side. I just think that as good as we've been getting to the pass rusher, my concerns, of course, as great as that is, we're going to have concern about the pass rush because
Mhm.
our secondary had troubles at the beginning of last year, but once we made some changes, the secondary got better. So
Yep.
that becomes a strength now because we have a lot in that secondary back with a lot more experience now that you could pin your ears back with a Young and a Van Noy on the same side or Matabike on the other side with a OA. And I think Orca really creates some matchup problems with Young.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's fair enough. And he certainly, you have a chance to get more turnovers with both more pressure and a
Mm-hmm.
few more times hitting the quarterback. That would all be very positive. So I'm not saying Young's a bad player. I'm questioning the relative value of the acquisition. But
Yeah.
let's talk about who loses their spot, who loses playing time to Chase Young if the Ravens sign him.
Excuse me. I think that, with uh, Brett Urban possibly leaving, they have Broderick Washington there penciled in on the depth chart right now at right defensive end. I think that they play a lot of defensive linemen. His rotation is really good. It keeps them fresh. I think that Young could in Washington can split time there on passing downs, have Young in there because Young's a lot smaller than Washington. Young's only 265 at
Right.
6'5". Very, uh, you're talking about and back in the 2000 Ravens time. Well, when Michael McCurry was back there around that time, same size as Chase Young is right now. They're the same exact size, all except for about an inch. But the sizes of defensive linemen has changed dramatically.
Yeah.
That I think that Chase would probably have to adjust a little bit to some outside linebacker techniques like Van Noy did.
I mean, I think that's what he is with the Ravens
Yeah.
as an outside linebacker. Now that said, at 265, he is big enough to kick inside on a pure passing down.
Mm-hmm.
You could use him for that. But I'm looking at the outside linebacker group because the Ravens can't afford to carry less defensive
No.
linemen. They need those guys for the inside. On the outside linebacker group, you have at least 5 names that are there and penciled in for the start of the season, which obviously they don't have to have all of them. Owe and Van Noy, I think they definitely want to be there. Tavius
Correct.
Robinson, I think we'd agree, is a guy who's still an ascending player, and they get a lot of
Yes.
value out of him run down, so we're not getting rid of him. David Ajabo is got one foot out the door as far as I'm concerned.
I would agree with you.
Could be a
I would
cut this
agree
year.
with you. I think that Ajabo was probably Mike Mack's kind of guy because he had him at Michigan. I think that um, it's taken him a little while to get to the NFL level, and I think that fans are getting a little frustrated. I think that um, I'm not going to say they missed on it. Raven, you never want to say somebody missed. Only really has played 2 years, so I think he has an opportunity. But I think that Chase could step in a Jabo spot. But then you're talking about a rotational situation there, and the Ravens don't usually pay a lot of money for their rotational players, especially on the outside.
Right. I mean, I would kind of see Chase Young as being mostly a situational pass rusher. They could bring him
Mm.
in. He's not a terrible run defender. They could certainly bring him in and do some of that. But I think if you want to really maximize Chase Young, would you reduce his snaps slightly and use him as a situational rusher, or would you try and get some value on first and second down where they might not want to use Owe or Van Noy and maybe use him opposite Tavius Robinson on a lot of first and second downs?
But I agree with you on that. I think you're talking about size and Chase Young. He offers something that probably the other than maybe Van Noy with a good strong edge presence on the run. I think that can be um, very beneficial. And you put him and Robinson in there. I think that's for when we go against the big boys. When the Steelers try to run the ball on the edges and stuff like that. We have people out there that could set that edge and turn it back inside. I like them on first and second down. I like them if we use them on third down, we use them as a down lineman in a 3-point stance, maybe coming up that way to offset what Van Noy and Owe can do on the outside.
Okay, certainly not unreasonable that he'd be in a 3-point stance on an
Mhm.
obvious passing down. Is that uh, then the other guy and a guy we haven't mentioned yet with two that we mentioned on the depth chart. Number 5 on the depth chart is probably Adisa Isaac, who's just a rookie, and
Mhm.
I question whether or not they're really ready to give up on him. I think they are ready to give up on Ajabo, but I don't think they're ready to give up on Adisa Isaac, and it wouldn't make sense for them to, honestly, unless they know something about him from practice that they really don't like. Um, and then here's the other key thing is that if you sign Chase Young, even though Chase Young is young for a free agent, he's
Mhm.
not young for an NFL player, and they'd be missing an opportunity to develop another player that they drafted and would be cheap for several years. So if they have a Matt Judon or maybe a small school guy that they really love, who's in the mid to late rounds, they can't take a chance on that guy easily and get him playing time early in his career.
Well, I think this is Van Noy's last year on his contract, I
Mhm.
believe, coming up. So you can get if you're going to draft somebody, you can get somebody to really learn from Van Noy for a year, especially if you're going to draft them late. If you're going to draft them early, you can't put them on the practice squad because somebody will poach them, and next thing you know, you
Mhm.
lost one of your high draft picks. But if you're and the Ravens seem to do very well with drafting linemen or tweeners, so to speak, later or mid late round. So I think it's somebody that they could bring in and maybe go that route and then learn from Van Noy and some of the others. And I mean, I like Owe, but Owe is going to be due a contract here in a couple of years. And will he play himself out? Will he stay a Raven? I mean, a lot of questions, which of course we don't have answers for right now. But
They do have to make actually a decision right away on Owe if they want to extend him because he's coming up on his 5th-year option. They really would like that cap number to be lower for this year,
Mhm.
which would mean they'd have to extend him. Um, I think by the way, I'd be in favor of that, of extending Owe at this point, based on where he is in his career. But it's price dependent. I'm not
Yeah,
at it's a not at any price number kind of thing.
yeah.
Uh,
I think if you look at the available free agents now, there are a ton of edge rushers out
yeah.
there. I mean, and I think that a lot would prosper in the Ravens system just because of the way and that defensive philosophy there schemes things for outside rushers. Um, but I don't know. I like youth. I mean, I believe Matabike is what 27, somewhere around there, and Jones is like it's about the same age, 26, 27. I
I
believe that
actually
you
don't
could.
know about Jones, but he's younger than Matabike because he's
Mhm.
just entering his season 4, and
Mhm.
Matabike just completed year 5. Matabike is 27 years 2 months. Will be
Yep.
28 in November. And let's look at Jones for a second.
I think Jones is 26.
Okay, you could be, which means he's a little bit late, but he came through the COVID era. He's
Hmm.
he's 25. He won't be 26 until October. So that's pretty good. To me, he's the heart of the Ravens pass rush. Everything cycles off what double teams he's able to command,
Correct.
and then you get a bunch of one-on-one matchups that go outside of that.
And
And
I,
you,
I I believe that's why it will be tough if Pierce leaves. Pierce
Mhm.
did a lot of that, eating up two or three people so
Yep.
Van Noy and the linebackers and Hamilton can come in there. Um, so I do believe they will go after a bigger guy to play in the middle. Maybe they bring Class back on a 1-year deal. I love Class and would love to have him, but he's a different entity than what Chase Young is and what they both bring to the team.
Yeah, I'd love to see Calais back because you get a lot of inside value out of Calais Campbell in terms
Correct.
of the pass rush too.
He's
So
just so long with his arms and he's so tall and
plays low.
yep.
You live in the Pittsburgh areas from our
Yes.
production meeting. So you've heard Mike Tomlin talk about how difficult it was to scheme up to block the Ravens line. It was largely a function of Haloti Nada, and you had to work out from him in terms of
Hmm.
getting people blocked. Even though Suggs was Defensive Player of the Year right in that era, Haloti Nada was the guy that Tomlin always praised as being the one that was difficult to scheme for. Uh, uh, I really appreciate this. So what would you expect to pay Chase Young? That's the last question. I'm sorry I didn't bring that up.
Well, the comps I see on it, it looks like there's going to be about 16 to 17 million a year is what he's probably going to command on the market. And a lot of it has to do with his age, being 25 years old. You could sign him to a 4-year contract and have him, he can go for another contract before he's even 30. But I think if the Ravens want him, I think there's going to be a bidding war on Chase Young. I would say that it would probably have to be about about 18, maybe 19 million a year. So you're looking at 4 year, maybe 75 million, somewhere around there. And I know that money's tight with the Ravens, but with all the rumors out there, and I hope the rumors are wrong about like letting Mark Andrews go or trading him away. And, with Pierce, with Pierce probably retiring, it looks like. There's a little bit of money to be made, but then you got to pay Ronnie Stanley, and probably going to get another cornerback from somewhere. So it's going to be tough, but.
Okay, and I would be in that camp that I think it's going to be very difficult for them to fit Chase Young in.
Sure.
They could do it if they really wanted to. They've been so successful with bargain basement free agents at edge position in particular, Justin Houston and Clowney and Van Noy, that I just don't see them going after a big money guy. And there's a traditional Twitter wisdom out there right now that says you have to have a number one pass rusher or you can't get after the quarterback because look, the Ravens have never been able to win in the playoffs. Well, the Ravens have rushed the passer extremely effectively over the last few years. And it's really hard to find fault with the Ravens pass rush as a whole. And you made the point that their pressure rate is a little lower. That's not insignificant, and it may have in fact impacted their turnover numbers last year. But I have a lot of problems with spending a lot of money for a marginal increase in pressure rate may or may not increase your overall sack rate at all, and just seeing what happens with your defense. I mean, you might end up spending 8% of your cap doing so, and that just to me that would be too much.
Well, and the one thing that's really against signing Chase is Matabike has a big contract. You can't have two big contracts just on the D line. That like you talked about, eating into your salary cap, and you start to get up there, you're spending almost as much in your D line as you do in your quarterback and other, marquee players. Not that D line's not, but I do understand it. My concern and it seems to raise its ugly head, especially against Mahomes and them, is when you start to blitz from the secondary like Hamilton, or you start to blitz off the edge and get cute. He's so smart. He seems to just pluck us every single time. And if in Philadelphia, they just rush those four, and every now and then they blitz, but it wasn't that often. They rushed. If you can get to the quarterback with four.
Yeah, that's the ultimate defensive weapon.
Yes, it is. It is. And I just think in today's society, or in today's world, the Josh Allens are going to get better at reading it. The Joe Burrows are going to get better at reading it, and that concerns me a little bit.
Okay, so I mean, it is usually a four-man rush for the Ravens, as we talked about, 81% of the time, but they do it a lot of different ways. They can blitz the slot corner and drop an edge. They could do a lot of things, and I don't disagree that creates some issues. I think it also creates some difficulty for the easy hot reads as well. So if you drop an edge player who drops is one of the few people who has the bulk to really deal with players slipping off bunch formation to the inside to beat inside linebackers. So that's one of the things that's a nice thing. If you an edge rusher just drops 3 steps and can hit that guy, try to come across underneath him, is a nice benefit to have. Also, just can obstruct him a lot of times as he's backing up. He doesn't even have to hit him. He just disrupts the play with his own movement.
That's what made Class so good with us. He was so long. I mean, he's tall and long arms. It seems like he batted 2 passes down every game, and just in prime time when we needed it too. So,
all right. Hank, pleasure talking with you here about this. Tell folks where they can talk football with you online.
The pleasure was all mine, Ken. I appreciate all your help.
Do you have a place? Do you want to give your Twitter account so people can contact you
Oh,
online
sure.
if they like?
Yep, my Twitter account is Hankapalooza, and so you can just go on there. And I appreciate it. I live in Pittsburgh, which is extremely tough when you're a Ravens fan,
I
but
bet.
it was kind of nice this past year, I will say, Ken. So hopefully they
All
can
right.
keep it up.
So I'm wondering, after those 2 losses late in the season, they'd won 8 out of 9 versus the Ravens. Were people saying 8 of 10 after the first game, and are they still saying 8 of 11 as of now?
No,
Good. I thought
they weren't saying too much at all. I tell you what, their fans are tough on their players and their coaches here. I'll listen to I really listened to it after the Baltimore Pittsburgh game and listened to talk radio, and man,
you're in the groove right then. That's
yeah.
got to be a lot of fun.
Talk radio wants Mike Tomlin out here as fast as possible, and I don't know. I enjoy the rivalry though, Ken. I do.
All right. Hank, appreciate you. Other folks out there, if you'd like to do a show like Hank just did, hit me up. We still got time for some of the big name UFAs, but you got to be quick about it. Hit me up with a DM on Twitter. I'll get right back to you, and we'll get you scheduled to do a show just like this. Hank, thanks again for coming on.
Thanks, Ken. I appreciate it, buddy. You have a good one.
And we'll talk to you next time on Film Study.
Bye.